we're going to bring you the first thing of the day, which we're going to get you very excited about. We've had, this is, I think, the 20th anniversary, Mary, is that right? Just scream. Of Mary Meeker's Internet Report, and we're excited to have brought it to first all things digital and now code, and she's going to set the tone for things people are talking about. I met Mary, I think, 25 years ago in an office in Morgan Stanley, and she's just as lively as ever, and she is going to do 412 slides in 25 minutes. So get ready and start writing down. But all the slides will be up on our site for you to peruse later, but here she goes,
we'll
Mary
be taking
Meeker.
a nap.
Yeah, we'll take them back. Thank you, Mary Meeker, let's go.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Good job, Town Crier. Thank you very much. I'm going to run through these slides very quickly. For those that are watching online, do not practice this in your own offices or with your friends. So this is the outline of the presentation. I'm going to talk about where the internet has been and over the last 20 years and where it's going a little bit, key internet trends, talk about reimagining a whole host of things, talk about America's evolving work environment, run through some of the big internet markets, China and India, go through some public-private company data in the internet space, and starting out. So internet trends. We're 2/3 of a generation into the internet, in effect starting in around 1995 from a commercial standpoint, but we're also 2/3 of a generation out. We have a group of people who are 20 years old who've been with us their entire lives, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later. So what's happened since 1995? Internet penetration globally has gone from 1% to 39%. Mobile phone user penetration has gone from 1% to 73%. Public internet company market capitalizations have risen from $17 billion in 1995, if we look at the top 15 public companies, to $2.4 trillion today. User control of content has risen significantly, and the impact of the internet has been extraordinary and broad, but in many ways it's just beginning. We put together, we sort of analyzed how much impact has the internet had in different areas of society. On consumer, it's been pretty pervasive. Business, pervasive, but not quite all the way there. Security, safety, and welfare, about halfway there. Education and healthcare, a long way to go. And government is still early in regulation and policy thinking in adapting to the internet. We'll talk more about that later. What are some of the key internet trends? Global internet user and smartphone subscription growth is good, but the growth rate continues to slow. We're at 2.8 billion global internet users, up 8% in 2014, down from 10% in 2013. There are 2.1 billion smartphone subscribers worldwide, up 23% in 2014, but down from 27% in 2013. The incremental new users for internet and smartphones are harder to get because of where we are in the adoption cycle. 76% of internet users already own a smartphone. In addition, the new users are harder to garner because of dependence on developing markets. If we look at the markets that have more than 50% penetration of smartphones, the average GDP per capita is $44,000. If we look at the markets where penetration is less than 50%, average GDP per capita is $13,000. And so these markets just have lower GDP per capita, lower spending power, and infrastructure that is further behind. Usage growth is strong, up 21% year on year, aided by mobile and video. Usage growth measured by engagement is also pretty solid, up 11% year on year. Mobile is at 3 hours per day versus less than 1 hour per day 5 years ago. Advertising and monetization, mobile remains compelling. Growth rates for the leaders are still high, but they're slowing. We remain really optimistic about mobile ad spending, and print remains way over indexed relative to time spent. ARPU and MAU growth for the leaders is slowing. Internet advertising growth is solid. Mobile is growing really quickly at 34%, but it's just 14% of total, and desktop advertising is decelerating at 11% growth. So we think there are a handful of things that vendors, brands, and consumers should be really excited about. On the ad format front, ads are increasingly optimized for mobile. They're often fast, interactive, and fun, and they're video. I, for one, am really excited about Vessel's 5-second ad, short-term form video, making a point in 5 seconds. I think is a beautiful thing. Pinterest has a cinematic pen that makes you feel like you're in the video. Facebook carousel ads and Google local inventory ads that allow you to figure out which products are available at stores nearby. Buy buttons will increasingly be rolled out. They minimize the friction to purchase at the moment of interest. Twitter, Facebook, and Google are all leading the way there. Something funny happened on the way to the small screen. We used to look at TV, and we still do in many, we used to look at video on large horizontal screens. Increasingly, we're looking at video on our small screens. This, for Lakers fans, is Stephen Curry on Snapchat on a small mobile device. Vertical viewing, I think as Evan alluded to last night, is 29% of view time versus 5% 5 years ago. So a massive change at a relatively rapid rate. Full screen video vertical ads on Snapchat are getting 9x higher completion rates than horizontal mobile video ads. So certainly something that consumers appear to be liking and advertisers should be excited about. Mobile usage has evolved rapidly. We've gone from text to video to images to videos to all of the above. And we think that buy buttons are likely to appear just as seamlessly, and we'll look back 2 years from now and be surprised at how pervasive they've become. So on our theme of a few years ago, reimagining continues. We're going to look at enterprise computing. We think enterprise computing is being reimagined one business process at a time. This is a tweet from Aaron Levy. It says, enterprise software used to be about making existing work more efficient. Now the opportunity for software is to transform the work itself. If we look at the winners and innovators in the consumer internet, they're oftentimes entrepreneurs who pursue a personal passion, like Daniel Ek with music. Enterprise internet entrepreneurs often pursue prior company pain points. Classic example is Stuart Butterfield in business communications at Slack, was frustrated with email, created a great communications product that is helping decrease internal email traffic materially. Offline payments, Jack Dorsey at Square. Online payments, the Collison brothers at Stripe. Business analytics, Domo. Document signing and transaction management, DocuSign. Customer communication, Intercom. Customer success, Gainsight. Customer service, human resources, enterprise planning and performance management and optimization, recruiting, background checks, employee knowledge and training, and even getting in and out of the door with visitor management and Envoy. The point of this is business process is being imagined in effect one app and one service at a time very, very quickly. 10 years from now, when we look back at how this era of big data has evolved, we'll be stunned at how uninformed we used to be when we made decisions. Reimagining messaging, with lots of improvements, change, and growth ahead. Messaging apps are among the top global apps in the world based on usage and session. Six of the top 10 apps, most globally used apps, are messaging apps. Communicating via mobile messaging is a beautiful thing. It's asynchronous yet instant. It's expressive yet fast. It's engaging yet user-controlled. It's casual yet professional. It's easy yet productive. It's personal yet mainstream. It's mobile yet distributed. It's instant yet secure. It's real-time yet playable. It's current yet evergreen. It's accessible yet global. And it's simple yet 24/7. The messaging leaders around the world are growing really quickly, and they're building expansive platforms and moats. The leaders with hundreds of millions of users are WhatsApp, WeChat, Facebook Messenger, Line, Snapchat, KakaoTalk. And if we look at the leaders in the Asian markets, where the adoption has been, and innovation has been fastest, these players have been developing evolving playbooks. And some of the global players that are less in country and more global, like Facebook Messenger and Snapchat, are taking those playbooks and implementing them on a global basis and doing some other things that haven't been done before. In messaging, not one size fits all for now. Many people use different messaging apps for various purposes. But if the WeChat trend continues to play out globally, mobile messaging leaders will evolve into central communications hubs. This is an example of some of the stuff that's going on with Facebook Messenger. Focuses on content, identity, and context-persistent conversation. Notifications are also growing very rapidly and are increasingly interactive, and they're driving new touch points with messaging platforms and other apps. So if we look at where the new internet users are going to come from, they're likely already non-smartphone mobile users, and they're most likely to onboard to the internet via messaging platforms like those that I mentioned. Messaging and notifications are key layers of every meaningful mobile app. Messaging leaders are aiming to create cross-platform operating systems that are context-persistent communications hubs for more and more services. The net of this is watch the space. Reimagining content, it's increasingly user-generated and curated and often surprising. User-generated tag, curated, and indexed and searchable images are up 75% year on year to a whopping 50 billion pins on Pinterest. User-generated video from millions of creators, yet curated by Snapchat, is growing rapidly with live stories. On New Year's Eve, more than 37 million people viewed the Snapchat story on New Year's Eve in 24 hours. Those are big, big numbers. User-generated, shared, and curated video is rising rapidly. Facebook has 4 billion video views per day. That's up 4x in 6 months. User-generated live gaming and streaming, up 122% year on year to 100 million MAUs on Twitch. User-generated curated audio content, including remixes, 10 million creators on SoundCloud, up 2x over the last 2 years. User-generated written content and stories, up 140% year on year to 125 million cumulative stories on Wattpad. User-generated reviews and feedback, aka reputation, is up 140% year on year at 14 million new reviews on Airbnb in the last 12 months. Users are increasingly the first source for news via Twitter and data miner, and there's some examples here. Imagine that users are creating their content and they're recreating their internet. Reimagining internet usage, 12 and 24-year-olds continue to remain the trendsetters. If we look at how 12 to 24-year-olds are using the internet, it's a lot of visual stuff. Instagram, Snapchat, and Pinterest continue to rise. Millennials love their smartphones. Nearly 90% say their smartphone never leaves their side. Millennials love their smartphone cameras. 44% use the camera and video function daily. 76% post on social media. The smartphone is increasingly becoming a very smartphone, reimagining presence, all visual, all the time. Reimagining getting what you want when you want it. Just-in-time information is enabled by mobile, sensors, and humans. 84% have used their mobile phone to use turn-by-turn navigation while driving, as an example. Just-in-time products and services are also being enabled by mobile, sensors, and humans. These are some fulfillment time estimates for some of the leading on-demand players in the United States, and we know many of them well. We're reimagining consumer spending. If we look at consumer spending ranking categories, housing is number 1, transportation number 2, food, insurance premiums, and healthcare. We're going to drill down on that a little bit. If we look at the top 3 areas and look at the average spending per household, the average American spends 33% of their income on housing, 18% on transportation, and 14% on food. The average individual needs shelter every day, drives 37 miles a day, and visits a grocery store twice a week. These are high size and spending, high engagement markets that also have traditionally weak user experiences that we think are being reimagined. Reimagining bird's eye view. Drone growth. If we look at drones, and we've studied the history of the technology industry for a long time, something is going on here. It's unique, it's fast, it's global, it's consumer, yet commercial, and the regulators are very engaged right out of the box. Drone shipments estimated 4 million units in 2015, growing 170% year on year. The market is very global. It's unusual when a new tech product comes out that it's this the usage is this, and purchases are this distributed around the world. Not only are they consumer purchases, businesses are deploying them very quickly. The commercial opportunity is very broad. Operational improvements, resource management, and public safety. In the US, which has previously been held back somewhat by regulation, it's increasingly opening for business. More than 400 companies have been approved by the government to commercially operate drones. The commercial drone market, we think, has a lot of potential. It's bigger, more constructive than many believe, though it certainly has some risks. Cyber attacks are growing in size, complexity, and risk. Insider misuse is a significant cause of breaches. Mobile devices are increasingly used to harvest data. Mobile device management is critical in preventing breaches. Human focus is critical in preventing remediating attacks. Security skills are the biggest gap in enterprise security programs, and disclosures of breaches are coming from outside sources, not inside sources. We're going to do something a little different this year, but there's been so much talk about the on-demand companies that we thought we'd do a deep dive on what's really happened in the workplace. And this is not intended to be a comprehensive story, but we've pulled together some data that we thought was interesting that we think will be helpful in the debate as this debate continues about what to do in the sector. Globalization and structural changes plus mobile connectivity plus generational shifts are changing the way many people work. What we're going to cover in this section: jobs and work have evolved, people have changed, connectivity has changed, new forms of commerce are transforming how people can get products and services. Changes in connectivity and commerce are changing, are impacting the way people can work. We're still in the early innings. Online marketplaces and platforms are increasingly under focus from regulators, and people, systems, and regulations and policies need to evolve to adapt together to a more connected society. Jobs and work have evolved. Jobs, many reshaped by globalization and structural changes. U.S. is declining as a percent of global GDP. World trade is rising as a percent of global GDP. Goods producing jobs are falling. Population since 2000 grew 2.5 times faster than jobs. Prior to that, in the 50 years prior to that, jobs grew faster than population. High-skilled knowledge-based jobs grew 2x since 1983, while other jobs grew just 1.3x. Union participation is declining. Employee retirement plan sponsorship is falling. Source of healthcare insurance is shifting away from employers. Government benefit recipients are rising. People have changed. Urban dwellers have risen. Immigrant population has risen. 18 to 32-year-olds, marriage rates are falling. Household sizes are declining. Millennials are the largest generation in the workforce this year. Millennials' most valued work benefits are training and development, flexible hours, and cash bonuses. Millennials expect flexibility and like technology at work. And millennials are the largest cohort in the on-demand worker category at 44% of the total, or 1 million. Millennial work values are perceived to be different versus the prior generation. This is data that looks at what hiring managers think millennials are like. I'll let you read the slide. That way I'm sort of off the record. And millennial work values millennials believe their values are different than their bosses do. Again, something for another time. But anyway, connectivity has changed. Connectivity via the internet has upped dramatically. 84% of the population versus 9% in 1995. Connectivity via mobile smartphones is up dramatically, 64% of the population versus 18% in 2009. The big 20-year change that a lot of things haven't caught up to yet is that people are connected 24/7 with mobile devices. New forms of commerce are transforming how people can get products and services. E-commerce, 9% of sales, up from 1% in 1998. First-generation online platforms and marketplaces for products are rising. They were optimized for the desktop internet and for traditional shipping delivery, the boxes that show up at your door. This next generation of online platforms and marketplaces for services is rising. They're optimized for mobile internet devices and on-demand local delivery. Consumers increasingly expect that they can get what they want when they want it with increasing ease and speed. This fundamentally changes the underpinnings of business and can create rising demand for flexible workers. Changes in connectivity and commerce impact consumption and the ways people work. We're still in the early innings. More people are working in flexible and supplemental jobs. Freelancers, 34% of the workplace, 53 million people, significant and growing. Freelancers use the internet to get and do business. The internet is enabling commerce in increasingly efficient ways. The rise of connectivity and online marketplaces and platforms is helping people earn income and work on their own terms. This looks at some of the metrics behind some of the product commerce companies like Alibaba and Amazon, and some of the service-oriented companies like Airbnb and Uber. People typically use online platforms to find extra income and flexibility. This is data that looks at how people are supplementing their income. 82% of Etsy sellers are part-time. The income from these platforms for many people is material. And a lot of people like the flexibility that these platforms offer. 25% of the on-demand workers use multiple platforms, so they're not beholden to one, which gives them even more flexibility to offer the services that they want to. So the growth in online marketplaces and platforms and marketplaces creates benefits and challenges, as we all know. For consumers, the benefits are choice, access, time savings, transparency, personalization, online reputation, and trust systems are often in place. The challenges are the time-cost trade-off, quality, trust, and time-convenience trade-off. The benefits and challenges for workers. Benefits can be financial, extra income, flexibility in time, effective skill set match, feedback communication, oftentimes real-time, data, customer base, and growth. The challenges relate to incumbent displacement, financial, lack of predictable income, uncertainty, lack of clarity on benefits sometimes, asset use, training development, and workplace culture. So the regulatory focus on these platforms and marketplaces is evolving. Traditionally, in the work environment, we have incumbents, regulators, and innovators with workers and consumers in the middle. We think there's a shift going on here where consumers, by virtue of having the internet, are voting to use a lot of these innovator products, and workers at the margin are moving to accept some of those opportunities for work that are available. The thing that's different this time is the consumers and workers are armed with mobile devices plus social media, i.e. ratings and feedback, which is helping drive these innovators and creating some clean, well-lit businesses around trust and safety. Regulators, incumbents, policymakers, and plaintiffs' lawyers are very focused on this emerging category. You know these headlines. The net of these issues is Uber and Lyft and others are facing confusion in the regulatory environment related to the worker classification system. Airbnb facing confusion in the regulatory environment related to a myriad of local laws on hotels and short-term rentals. StubHub, which was founded in 2000, went through a lot of these things as it built its business, and it faced confusion in the regulatory environment, and proved marketplaces can be regulators' allies. The last point here, without going into the details, is with the passage of time and collaboration, StubHub has helped regulators do their jobs, effectively regulating what they had intended to regulate, the regulators had intended to regulate all along. People and systems and regulations and policies need to evolve and adapt to a more connected society. Here's a high-level summary of what I just went through. The job market has been more difficult and work has been harder to find for many. Benefits, traditional employer-provided benefits like health insurance and retirement plans are falling. Recipients of government benefits are rising. Millennials have different expectations for work than previous generations for now. That's shaped in part by the Great Recession. Connectivity has created efficiencies and has changed work for many. Alternative work arrangements, including freelancing, are increasing. Competition for workers may rise with demand. Online platforms and marketplaces are growing rapidly, creating new work opportunities and challenges for individuals. These will continue to rise, similar to the trends and impact from the first generation internet companies, potentially faster and broader. We all need to help shape the direction and evolve policies and laws. Industry participants, workers, businesses, and governments need to work together to be more aligned with rapidly emerging ways of doing business and creating work, and recognize that emerging technologies and marketplaces can help solve for consumer and worker welfare. Innovation in online platforms and marketplaces stand to continue to benefit consumers. This is evinced by the strong demand for their products and services. The impact of social media, feedbacks and ratings, should not be underestimated. Empowered consumers are increasingly, in effect, are taking elements of consumer protection into their own hands. So, shifting from that to some of the biggest internet markets in the world, China is #1 in sheer mass. India is #1 in new user additions. China. Digital innovation is alive and well. Our friends at Hill House Capital created this section. It's actually quite good. Tencent WeChat has massive scale and engagement, billions of red envelopes sent and received on one day, Chinese New Year. Tencent WeChat is a major video distribution channel. It's affecting social change at the margin and shaping social debate. Recently, a video called Under the Dome that was a 100-minute long-form documentary about smog in China got 200 million views within 3 days of release. This is a big deal. Tencent WeChat is helping governments get online, offering government services to its nearly 600 million users. China's social commerce is rising. This is an example of some products that are growing very quickly that focus on content, community, and commerce and have it all integrated into one app. China local food delivery also growing very quickly. It's one of the fastest growing and most competitive local on-demand services in China. Traditional internet leaders are evolving from information-only services to on-demand service providers as well. M&A is accelerating in China. The two largest on-demand startups recently merged, as an example. China e-commerce low take rates have helped the China marketplace leaders surpass their US peers. Taobao Tmall's take rate is 3% compared to eBay global marketplace take rate at 8%. The Internet of Things is alive and well in China. Xiaomi, smartphone leader in China, 227% year-on-year unit growth in 2014. This shows that they're the leader. They're in effect not just a smartphone, but they're a retail store, a remote control, and a remote control for home management. This looks at the home management products that they shipped: set-top box, TV, a router, a scale, a webcam, a band, and Xiaomi Mi is in effect. Xiaomi Mi is the product. They've created quite an ecosystem and have 2 million users of the integrated home, Internet of Things products that they offer. Large-scale internet adoption history. USA was the first market to get to mainstream. China was next. Looks like India will be next. This looks at internet penetration of population. The blue line is US, with time on the bottom. China next, and it looks like India may be the next market. Some data on India. 232 million users, growing at 37% year on year, third largest market for internet users in the world. It's the top country in new internet user adds per year, 63 million added in 2014. In India, it's often the number 1 or 2 MAU market for global internet leaders, Facebook, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Twitter, YouTube. The top India Android apps are WhatsApp, Facebook, MX Video Player, Facebook Messenger, and Truecaller. The internet is much more mobilized in India than in other markets in the world. Percent of mobile internet traffic at 65% ranks highest in almost any country in the world. 41% of e-commerce in India is mobile. And if we look at the e-commerce leaders worldwide and in India, the yellow line represents Snapdeal, the blue line represents Flipkart. This looks at the percent of their e-commerce GMV that is on mobile devices. Mobile wallet use is growing very rapidly in India as well. Some public-private company data. This is our annual ranking, which you can get anywhere, of the top 20 internet companies in the world. Apple, Google, Alibaba, Facebook, Amazon, Tencent continue to lead the charge and showing nice appreciation. This looks at global technology, public and private financings. The dollar volume is 33% below the 2000 peak level, but 17% above the 1999 level. So some technology-related company investing observations, booms and busts. In periods of material business disruption, like those brought about by the evolutions of the internet, company creation typically goes through a boom, bust, boomlet cycle, while wealth creation typically goes through a boomlet, bust, boom cycle. Valuations, there are pockets of internet company overvaluation, but there are also pockets of undervaluation. The one rule of thumb is that very few companies will win, and those that do win big. Platforms, the race is won by those that build platforms and drive free cash flow over the long term, like a decade or more, not a quarter or two. And free cash flow, the value of a business over time is the present value of its future cash flows. And with that, I'm just going to add one more thing as a topic of this conference. Diversity matters. It's just good business. One of the things I've learned about effective decision making is that the best decisions are often made by diverse groups of people. Saying or hearing these words is magic. Hey, that's really interesting. I'd never thought of that. And with that, thank you very much.